The graveyard shift at any budget hotel is a bizarre purgatory. Between the hours of midnight and 6 in the morning, the world shrinks down to a hum of fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial carpet cleaner, and the occasional insomniac wandering the lobby looking for vending machine salvation. When there are only two people staffing the front desk, an unspoken ecosystem develops. You quickly learn who is the engine keeping the place running and who is merely a passenger enjoying the ride. I was the engine. My coworker Vance was a world-class passenger. He had mastered the elusive art of aggressive loitering, the ability to look intensely preoccupied while contributing absolutely nothing to the physical reality of our workplace. The Grandview Inn was a three-story monument to beige architecture overlooking an interstate overpass. Running the night audit there wasn't glamorous, but it required a rhythm. While the rest of the city slept, I spent my hours resetting the entire hotel for the morning rush. I wiped the sticky, hardened puddles of hazelnut creamer from the coffee station. I re-encoded stacks of magnetic key cards that always managed to demagnetize themselves. I balanced the daily ledger, tracking down every missing penny from the vending revenues and room charges. It was tedious, invisible labor. Vance, on the other hand, treated the shift like a paid networking event where he was the only attendee. He was a tall guy with an impeccably ironed uniform and a smile that belonged on a billboard for a predatory dental clinic. His primary strategy involved holding a clipboard. It didn't matter what was on the clipboard, usually just a blank guest manifest. But as long as he held it, tapped his pen against it, and occasionally frowned at the lobby computer screen, he projected an aura of management material. Whenever I was elbow deep in the breakfast pantry, hauling out heavy bags of powdered eggs, Vance would be leaning against the front desk, charming the occasional late-night arrival. He never restocked the towels. He never emptied the overflowing trash bin by the side entrance. But the moment the sliding glass doors parted at 7 in the morning and Nadine, our chronically stressed general manager, walked in, Vance's performance peaked. He would casually intercept her, clipboard in hand, and deliver a comprehensive report on the night's events, seamlessly weaving my accomplishments into his narrative. He used the word "we" with the precision of a seasoned politician. "We got the ledger balanced," he would say, or "we managed to deep clean the coffee carafes." I usually just rolled my eyes and clocked out. I didn't care about the glory, I just wanted my paycheck and my bed. But there was one specific task that bound us together in a web of mutual liability: the breakfast prep. The Grandview Inn's continental breakfast was a bleak affair, but the undisputed crown jewel of the morning was the self-serve waffle station. Guests would riot if the waffle maker wasn't operational. For that to happen, the night shift had to physically enter the walk-in deep freeze, locate the 5-gallon plastic buckets of frozen waffle batter, and move them to the standard refrigerator. It took exactly 12 hours for that solid block of yellow ice to thaw into a pourable consistency. Technically, moving the batter was a shared responsibility. Realistically, it was the one manual task Vance had grudgingly accepted as his own, mostly because it required walking past the security cameras in the kitchen, giving the illusion on tape that he was doing inventory. However, Vance possessed the short-term memory of a goldfish. If the batter didn't get moved, the morning breakfast attendant would arrive to find an impenetrable glacier of dough, resulting in a cascade of furious complaints from business travelers demanding their complimentary carbs. When that happened, Nadine yelled at both of us. To avoid the collateral damage of his incompetence, I developed a habit. Every single morning, right at 10 minutes past 5, I would walk past the front desk, tap the laminate counter, and say, "Batter." Vance would usually sigh, dramatically mark something on his useless clipboard, and shuffle off to the kitchen. It was a pathetic little safety net, but it kept the peace. I carried his dead weight because it was easier than dealing with the fallout. Then came the Tuesday morning that fundamentally altered the ecosystem of the Grandview Inn. I was in the back office, finishing up the final printed reports for the audit. The door was cracked open just an inch, allowing a sliver of the lobby to filter in. Nadine had arrived early, a full 20 minutes before my shift was supposed to end. I heard the sharp click of her heels on the linoleum, followed by Vance's overly enthusiastic greeting. I paused my typing, intending to grab my bag and head out, when I heard my name drift through the crack in the door. "Honestly, Nadine, it was a rough night," Vance was saying, his tone dripping with manufactured concern. "I had to practically run the desk by myself for an hour." I froze, my hand hovering over the mouse. "Where was Romy?" Nadine asked, her voice tight. "Oh, you know," Vance chuckled, a low, patronizing sound. She's been a bit scattered lately, forgetful about the closing details, leaving the pantry unlocked, missing the creamers. I don't want to complain because I know she tries, but I basically have to follow her around and double-check behind her just to make sure the morning shift isn't completely derailed. The silence in the back office was absolute. I stared at the blinking cursor on my monitor, feeling a cold, crystalline clarity wash over me. I wasn't angry. Anger is hot and messy and makes you do stupid things. What I felt was a sudden, profound liberation. Vance hadn't just thrown me under the bus. He had climbed into the driver's seat and reversed over me. He had weaponized my silent diligence to elevate himself. He claimed he double-checked behind me. He claimed he was the safety net. I quietly packed my bag, smoothed my uniform, and walked out into the lobby. Vance shot me a brilliant, fake smile. Nadine gave me a curt nod, her expression shadowed by whatever lies Vance had just finished planting in her head. I didn't defend myself. I didn't say a word about the coffee station I had scrubbed until my knuckles ached, or the ledger I had balanced while he watched compilations of car crashes on his phone. I just smiled back, clocked out, and walked into the crisp morning air. If Vance was the mastermind catching all my mistakes, he didn't need my reminders anymore. The safety net was officially cut. The next shift Thursday night began exactly like any other. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The smell of chlorine drifted from the pool hallway. I fell into my rhythm. I restocked the keycards. I wiped down the counters. I balanced the books. Vance assumed his position at the desk, leaning his elbows on the laminate, scrolling through his phone while occasionally glancing at the security monitors. The hours bled away. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. At 5 o'clock, the familiar internal alarm went off in my head. Breakfast prep. I was wiping down the glass doors of the lobby fridge, a rag in one hand, a bottle of blue glass cleaner in the other. I looked over at Vance. He was deep into a mobile game, his thumbs tapping furiously against the glowing screen. 5:10 arrived, the exact minute I usually gave him the nudge. I walked past the front desk. I didn't tap the counter, I didn't look at him. I simply carried my cleaning supplies into the back room, sat down at the desk, and began printing the audit reports. The silence in the hotel felt heavy, pregnant with the weight of the undone task. I pictured the 5-gallon bucket of waffle batter sitting in the deep freeze, encased in a thick layer of frost, hard as a cinder block. 5:30 came and went, 6 o'clock. At 6:15, the sliding doors opened and Coral, the morning breakfast attendant, shuffled in. Coral was a woman perpetually on the edge of a nervous breakdown, fueled entirely by nicotine and a deep hatred for the general public. She gave us a half-hearted wave and disappeared into the kitchen to begin her setup. 10 minutes later, Nadine arrived. She marched into the lobby with her usual brisk energy, instantly scanning the area for imperfections. Vance immediately straightened up, sliding his phone into his pocket and grabbing his trusty clipboard. "Good morning, Nadine," he beamed, practically vibrating with unearned confidence. "Quiet night, everything is squared away. I made sure the lobby is spotless." "Good," Nadine said, grabbing a cup of coffee from the urn I had brewed 30 minutes prior. Before Vance could launch into his usual monologue of stolen valor, a sound echoed from the kitchen hallway. It was a loud, hollow thud, followed immediately by Coral's voice, raw and shrill. "Are you kidding me?" Nadine frowned, setting her coffee down. "What is going on back there?" We all migrated toward the kitchen. I hung back slightly, my face a carefully constructed mask of mild curiosity. We found Coral standing in front of the open walk-in refrigerator, gesturing wildly at an empty shelf. On the stainless steel prep table beside her sat a plastic bucket coated in a thick white layer of ice. "It's a brick," Coral yelled, slapping the side of the bucket. It made a sound like a baseball bat hitting concrete. The batter wasn't pulled. "It's frozen solid. Breakfast opens in 20 minutes and I have a youth hockey team coming down here expecting waffles." Nadine's face darkened. The air in the kitchen instantly dropped 10 degrees. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto Vance. "Vance," Nadine said, her voice dangerously quiet, "why is the waffle batter frozen?" Vance's impeccable posture dissolved. He blinked, looking from the frozen bucket to Nadine, his brain scrambling to formulate a defense. I thought." He swallowed hard, his eyes darting toward me, seeking the familiar scapegoat. "I thought Romy handled the kitchen prep last night. She was back here earlier." I stood perfectly still, letting the silence stretch out. I didn't cross my arms, I didn't smirk. I just looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. Nadine didn't even look in my direction. She took a step closer to Vance, her eyes narrowing into cold, judgmental slits. "You thought Romy handled it? Nadine repeated, her tone dripping with venom. That's fascinating, Vance. Because just 3 days ago, you stood in my lobby and told me that Romy was forgetful. You told me she was slipping on her closing details. Vance's mouth opened but no sound came out. The color rapidly drained from his face. In fact, Nadine continued, taking another step forward, backing him against the stainless steel prep table. You explicitly told me that you always have to double-check behind her to make sure the morning shift isn't derailed. So if you knew she was forgetful, and you are the one who supposedly double-checks everything, how exactly did a 5-gallon bucket of solid ice make it past your rigorous inspection? The room got quiet real fast. The only sound was the low, mechanical hum of the industrial refrigerator. Coral stood with her hands on her hips, watching the execution with undisguised glee. Vance looked like a fish pulled out of water, his mouth opening and closing as he searched for a lifeline that didn't exist. He had built his entire reputation on the lie that he was my supervisor, my safety net. To admit he simply forgot would destroy the illusion. To blame me again would directly contradict his own fabricated narrative of being the responsible one. He was trapped in a cage built entirely out of his own words. I must have missed it, he finally stammered, his eyes glued to the floor tiles. It won't happen again. You're damn right it won't, Nadine snapped. Coral, see if you can thaw enough in the microwave to get the first hour covered. Vance, you are going to stay past your shift. You are going to stand at the waffle station, apologize to every single guest for the delay, and you are going to personally make their waffles once the batter is ready. Is that understood? Yes, Nadine, he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. I quietly backed out of the kitchen, retrieved my bag from the office, and walked out through the lobby. As the sliding doors closed behind me, the morning sun hit my face, and I took a deep, satisfying breath of stale highway air. Vance didn't get fired that day, but something fundamental broke inside his carefully constructed facade. When I came in for my next shift, the clipboard was gone. When I started wiping down the coffee station, he silently picked up a rag and started cleaning the glass doors. At 5:10 in the morning, I didn't say a word. I just sat at the desk and listened to the heavy, distinct sound of a plastic bucket being hauled out of the deep freeze and placed into the refrigerator. He never tried to act like my manager again. He just did his job, driven by the lingering trauma of his own hubris. The truth about the workplace is that weaponized incompetence only works as long as someone else is willing to be the shield. The moment you step aside and let the arrows fly, the people who spend all their time pretending to work are usually the first ones to get pinned to the wall. Sometimes, the most devastating revenge doesn't require a master plan, a confrontation, or a shouting match. Sometimes, the most destructive thing you can do to a liar is to simply agree with them, step back, and let the sheer weight of their own lies crush them. If you've ever had a coworker who took credit for your sweat while avoiding the heavy lifting, hit that subscribe button. Share your own stories of workplace karma in the comments below, and remember, never interrupt an arrogant fool while they are busy setting their own trap. Until next time, keep your head down, do your job, and never be afraid to cut the safety net.